Welcome everyone to TOWF 2021. Hope you're enjoying the festival so far, and we have a lot of incredible panels, including the one you're about to watch, which is about funding, where to get the money, how to get it, when to get it, and all that exciting information. As Rodney said, I'm James Stewart. I am a producer-director of a show called Chateau Laurier, which is a digital series that was funded and is funded by CMF and Ontario Creates. And I will be moderating and answering all your questions about how this part of our industry works. So on the panel today, we have Monica Keane, who is a telefilm employee in Vancouver. She is a business analyst for the CMF program administration team. If she can give us a big wave. I think we know who she is. We also have Daniel Hebert, who's a program consultant on the concept definition and production streams, as well as the industry development program and the IDM fund at Ontario Creates. And last and certainly not least, we have Charlie David, who is a creator like myself. He's a producer-director. His company is called Border to Border Entertainment, well known for Avocado Toast, which was on the festival circuit last year and won many awards, including CSA nominations. Currently shooting a queer dating web series called Dating Unlocked, which is funded by Ontario Creates and the Bell Fund. So welcome everybody. So just to kick it off, Danielle and Monica, can you just give us a brief overview of how your organization works, what funding is available, and maybe when your next deadlines are? So Monica, if you can start.
Sure. So at the CMF, we have the Digital Linear Series program, and the deadline for that is September 30th. And we have a budget of $4 million, and you can apply with your project when it's in its second or subsequent season. And so it has to be a digital linear series in its second or subsequent season. And we define a series as being at least 3 episodes of linear video content. And an episode has to be at least 2 minutes in duration. The genres that we support in this fund are drama, children's and youth, or documentary. And you can apply for the lesser of 60% of your budget up to a cap of $250,000.
That's great. So $250,000 is available for production. Is there development money as well, or anything else like that?
No, not through this fund.
Okay, great. Okay, so Danielle, tell us a little bit about Ontario Creates.
Sure. So Ontario Creates is an economic development agency. And through that, we have the IDM fund, which I'll probably speak most about today. And we have production and concept definition streams. So concept definition is our development fund, and that is for funding up to $50,000. Capped at 50% of your Ontario expenses. And then we also have a production stream, which is up to now $300,000, capped at 50% of Ontario expenses as well. It is a very competitive fund, as a CMF, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, well, that's a good segue. Danielle, just tell me a little bit about how many applicants you get every round and how many projects get funded. And then Monica, I'll ask you the same question.
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact number offhand, but it's about, I would say, about 50 applicants per round of both programs. And it's about a 30% success rate. So it is super competitive. And it's really challenging to make the decision sometimes, as I'm sure Monica would agree. But yeah, so that's about 30% success rate, I would say.
And what about your fund at CMF, Monica? How many applicants typically?
It varies by year, but I would say similar to Ontario Creates, where we get anywhere between 40 and 50. I'm not sure about the success rate. But what I should mention is that the way that we make our decisions, we have an evaluation grid, and it's included in the guidelines. And we also bring on board a jury, and it's in the past, it's been an international jury to review the creatives and the teams. And it's, we try to be very transparent in the way that we score the projects. And that evaluation grid in the guidelines is just kind of indicates how many points are allotted to each section of your application. But yes,
Okay.
it is very, very competitive. And we, every year it's so hard because we get so many great projects, and you want to be able to fund them all, and we just can't. We just don't have enough funds.
Yeah, I don't envy you. I'm sure that's a very daunting prospect to look at who you can fund. So for those in the audience, you should definitely go to the individual websites and take a look at the material, download it all, read it all. It's very, very informative, but not a short read. And then each organization does have seminars periodically where they're either on Zoom or they're pre-recorded, where you can get all the information. And then I suggest going back and then rereading everything so you really understand what's in store for you, and then start your application process a few months before the application. So Charlie, tell me a little bit about your experience with funding, and you could even use examples from Bell Fund, who's not here with us today, but certainly see any experience you have with CMF and your current experience with Ontario Creates.
Well, I think I would just start by saying that we're so extremely fortunate in Canada as producers and creators to have so many access points to funding, and we can get really creative in what will be most advantageous for our project. Most funders work on kind of a cyclical calendar, and so what we do at our company is we have a big calendar on the board, and we're always looking to where we're going to slot in a project that may be in development or production, and often looking 2 years in advance, because it often will take that time to really develop a project to being at that place of readiness for a fingers crossed successful application. When I first started producing, I used to be very much a bootstrapper with it and do a lot of, the whole credit card and friends and family way. I've also done it kind of private equity way. And then I got smart and I was like, wow, we have like this awesome support in Canada, and some that is, provincial based, like in Ontario Creates, Saskatchewan Creates, BC Creates, and then the programs that are available federally as well. So CMF, Bell Fund, IPF, and they all have their own very interesting idiosyncrasies and characteristics that, as you've mentioned, James, it's so important to really get familiar with each of the guidelines as far in advance as possible. And some of them also have kind of entry point programs, like Ontario Creates has the Futures program, where I've been involved in that previously, where a producer who has a little bit more experience will mentor a newer company kind of into the fold so that they can get to a place of readiness to apply. But just considering that all these funders operate in different ways. So the CMF, for example, and the Independent Production Fund, those are equity stakes. So what that means is that is a recoupable investment that they're making in your project. So the onus is then on us as producers to do the best that we can to create a successful and profitable project so we can replenish those funds, so us and other wonderful producers in the future can re-access them. Then a program like Ontario Creates and Bell Fund, those are grants. So, sometimes we use the phrase free money. It's not really free. We have to work to get it too. but it's not a recoupable investment, and really knowing what the difference is between those and what your responsibilities are to all of the funders is really important, because it's not done when you receive that check and you cash it. There's a lot of reporting. that is ongoing, through each of the funders' portals to make sure that we're being responsible with that money, because it's really a privilege when we receive it. When you're chosen, that means that all those other, if it's 70% or 60% of the people that didn't receive it this year at Ontario Creates or at the other funders, they worked also very hard, and we're hopeful, crossing every finger and toe, to get selected. So we want to make sure that we're doing our best to honor that money.
Okay, that's great. So for creators who are listening here, who are maybe just starting out that process, let me just do a quick overview. So there's a number of funders, and this is not an exclusive list, but we have Ontario Creates here for Ontario creators. We have CMF, which is a national organization. There's also, as Charlie mentioned, the Independent Production Fund, which is national, and there's Bell Fund. So those are the four main ones. There's others, Charlie, you might know better than I. There's a TELUS fund in BC that has a mental illness angle to it. Are the other usual suspects for where people are getting their money?
Yeah, I think TELUS Fund is really worthwhile in mentioning. I think some of the nuances with that one are really having a broadcast platform partner, or a digital platform partner that the audience base is robust enough that would kind of meet their eligibility. So even some digital platform partners that might check the box for some of the other funders, for TELUS, really recommended to get in touch with them in advance and make sure that your platform will kind of meet that high level marker, because otherwise you'll go through a lot of work in their application and then just maybe fall short there. You also need to have a health or wellness partner, so somebody that is a third party that will be also actively engaged with your show in its dissemination and marketing. So it's kind of a two-component thing. It's that content, and then the release strategy around it that must check the box of health or wellness. But I think you're right; those are the main ones. The last one would be tax credits, and so generally, a lot of linear digital series or web series would be eligible for CAVCO, so for the federal tax credit for film and television.
Yeah, and I think for that you just need a broadcaster, right? So you do a digital release, but then you also just need a broadcaster at some point.
You can actually get it even before, if your digital platform would be one that is approved by CAVCO, and they have a list on their website that you can just kind of cross-reference.
That's great. I found that when I started down this journey, it took me a while, like almost a whole cycle, to understand the cadence of the different funders. So IPF will be first in, Bell will be first in, Ontario Creates likes to be second in, CMF will be first in, but only on a second season. Is that correct? So essentially, and they all have rolling deadlines. Some of them are at the same time. So it's a little bit of a dance when you apply to one that's first in and one that's second in at the same time. They all know each other, so it's not a secret. But they're saying, okay, well, if you get this, then we'll be in second. Monica, can you just describe to us some of the kinds of projects that you have approved in the past, and kind of the kinds of projects you've not approved, and if there's anything that is unique to the things you fund, either subject matter wise or style, tone, or anything like that, that you could help people understand if their project is right for you?
Well, I think we really stick to our evaluation grid and also the genres. I think that in terms of eligibility, I think the trickiest genre would be documentary, because sometimes, and even like with television projects that are applying to our other funds, sometimes a documentary can kind of veer into like reality programming, and then that becomes an ineligible project. And so that's the genre that we have the most issue with. But other than that, for, there isn't a particular type of project that we're looking for. We're looking for something that's very well developed, that has had success in its previous season, that has had, nominations, awards for the previous season. Those are all items that are going to bring your project to the top. We're looking for third-party support, renewed support from your market channel partner, the reach of the market channel partner. Is it, just domestic? Is it an international reach? We're also looking at marquee elements, and also your marketing plan, your distribution strategy. If it's a strong, well thought out distribution strategy, then we know that, that there's going to be more eyes looking at your project and viewing your project. I think projects that are not successful in this fund may just be in a situation where they need a bit more development, a little bit more development on the scripts, on the distribution strategy, on the marketing side. So yeah, it's just like, I can't really say that there's one particular type of project because that we support, because it just really depends on what we get at the deadline.
Okay, so are any of these kinds of things worth avoiding? I'm just off the top of my head. So obviously you do drama, comedy. Would you do dance, experimental, other things like that?
So it would have to fall under like drama, children's and youth, or documentary. So anything like variety and performing arts that for this current fiscal year is not an eligible genre.
Okay. Okay, good. And Danielle, tell us a little bit about the projects that you have approved and that you've maybe avoided. One thing I discovered and found when applying to both is Ontario Creates has a very different mandate from CMF, because there is a job creation component to it. There is a business component. Just talk a little bit about that and just the kinds of projects that you have seen being successful and the kinds of projects that you've seen not quite making the grade.
Yeah, so similarly, we
And you're on
have
mute.
like oh, am I? Are you sure?
No, you're good now. You're good now.
Okay, I wasn't on mute before. You can hear me now, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
similarly, we do have a decision criteria you can see in our guidelines online. But yeah, so what we really look for, we look for really high quality content projects. So as you mentioned, we do have a different mandate. So we look for projects that are going to do really well for the company so that the company can grow and we can boost Ontario companies and create jobs in Ontario and can create spending in Ontario. So that's a big part of our evaluation on top of like the marketing plan, which sort of connects to that, the track record of the company, overall quality of the project. We do look at the creativity as well. But we really do like to see projects that are going to go out and really, especially for web series, it's not always going to be a huge commercial success, but it's going to be a critical success. So Chateau Laurier, Avocado Toast, two great examples. These are projects that have done really well and have a lot of views and have really helped grow companies in terms of their sort of reputation as being really great production companies. So that's more what we look for.
Okay, that's great. We touched on it earlier, but I've been to many festivals with Chateau Laurier, and we are so unique here in Canada in that there is a large amount of funding for web series, for digital series. The Americans are still doing credit card $15,000 series. God bless them, because some of them are incredibly talented and production values are very high. In Europe, there is some funding as well, and in Australia, there's government funding similar to Canada with their soft money at the state level and at their federal level. But it's very unique that we have really 4 to 5 solid funders as well as a pretty established tax credit system. Charlie, just describe for me some of the pitfalls that you have found. Nothing personal to the funders, but what are the biggest challenges you've found trying to get your head wrapped around the different funding deadlines and applications?
Mm-hmm. I think early on, and I'll just speak in generalities because you know, we've had some experience with different current shows and past shows with different mixes of funders. I think sometimes you, again, just like read those guidelines backwards and forwards. I'll share an example of how the first time I applied to Ontario Creates, we had a contract for broadcast in addition to digital platform right off the bat, and that made us ineligible. We had already applied to some other funders, and so then we ended up being a step, kind of like a phase behind, a calendar phase behind, in order to potentially reapply. And that's because Ontario Creates rightly wants this as a digital first platform or program, excuse me. And so there is the potential to repackage your content eventually for linear broadcast, but they want at least a 1 year from release window strictly digital. So that was a misstep on my side. I think one of the other challenges, and I think we've all probably talked, maybe not Monica and I, but Danielle and I have talked about this, and with Rachel and Suzanne at Bell and Carly at IPF, et cetera, is all the documentation that's required isn't harmonized between the funds. So budgets, for example, they're different formats, right? And so it means as the producer, if you want to apply to multiple funds, you're going to have to do your homework a few times over. And sometimes that means that line items, the director, which could be a 0601 on a Ontario Creates budget, might be a line item 1001 on a CMF / Bell / IPF budget. So in the accounting, I've just started doing, I put the line item numbers for whichever funders I'm working with, the description, that then will help with cost reporting and stuff after the fact, because otherwise you're just doing double work, and sometimes it doesn't always fit in the same categories. There's also, this isn't a problem, I'm very excited about it, Danielle, that there's new marketing spend requirements that have just been announced this spring with Ontario Creates, which means that we need to include 10% in audience engagement or discoverability or marketing in the production budget phase of your, I think it's BC items, I'm thinking CMF budget now. See, so it can easily happen. Okay,
It's all of it.
Yeah. But then with Bell, for example, it's different, that they don't want to see those kind of early marketing spends in a production budget because they have their audience engagement, used to be called discoverability program, that kind of runs concurrently. You apply for discoverability up to $50,000 in kind of marketing spend at the same time as you're applying for your production budget, but you separate them out. They're two different budgets. And then with Ontario Creates, they have the 10% that must be included in production. And then, surprise, surprise, they have an awesome other program that's their IDM marketing program for IDM content. So then you can apply again 90 days out from the release of your show for up to an additional 50%. That's like a dollar matching. So up to 50K if you're bringing 50K. You could also, if you have production companies putting in 15 and they might match 15, or it could be coming from your digital platform partner, a sponsorship from somewhere else, etc. So those are some of the parts that I think, if you're lucky enough to have more than one funder involved in your project, there may be a point where you need to just bring everybody under your one circus tent to have a little conversation about clarity, right? Like from the beginning, this is how our expenditures are planned to go. Make sure Bell Fund knows, make sure CMF knows, so that there's no surprises down the road for anybody. So if you can do that prior to contracting, that's ideal. Everybody is communicating well, questions are answered, and then you can proceed from there.
Yeah, that's great insight. I have found, so in terms of my experience, there's a number of projects that are typically web series in the $150,000 range, and then there's a number that are kind of mid range, and then there's the odd outliers that are more in the $1 million range. And the way they've done that at the bigger budget level is they've gone to each and every one of the funders, and they've figured out exactly how to go. Typically, people will get funding from one or two, and then say that's enough. We'll just go make our show. In our case, we did season one was essentially self-funded. We did have BravoFact money, may they rest in peace, but essentially it was self-funded. And then season two, we initially went to CMF, who graciously said yes. We applied to Bell Fund simultaneously. They said no. And then we went to Ontario Creates and Bell Fund next time around. And Ontario Creates again said, we'd love to, but it's close, but no. And then Bell Fund said no again. And then Ontario Creates said, yeah, but you're really close, reapply. And then we got Ontario Creates a second time. So we kind of went around the block twice. Our show, Shadow Laurier, is kind of in the mid-range, I would say. So depending on what your budget is, typically people will get one funder and they'll get, $250 or $150, and then a little bit of, another piece from somewhere else, whether it's personal money or private equity or something, and then they'll go do their show. So definitely, if you have 3 or 4 funders involved in some of the bigger budgets, you're into a real production, and there are real challenges with keeping everybody in sync. And as you mentioned, the budgets are not the same. They're very similar, but they're not quite the same. And you have to kind of realize that each one has a different mandate. Monica, can you just describe, if there's a way to describe what your mandate is? A lot of people have the impression that CMF values the creative more than the business side, and Ontario Creates values the business side more than the creative. Are those myths, or is there any insight into that?
Well, actually, in terms of the CMF, we value the market interest, like the business side, equally to the creative side. So, for example, like we will score the market interest, past and present, at 40 points, and then the creative elements are also scored 40 points as well. And then we look at the team. We look at the production team, creative team. We also give points for gender parity, and now new this year we're giving additional if the company is controlled at least 51% by someone of a diverse community. So, but yeah, and going back to your question, yeah, it's equally scored, creative and market interest.
Okay, Danielle.
Am I unmuted now? Yeah, we do actually technically weigh it a bit heavier on the quality and innovation of the project. That's about 30%, and then 20% is the potential for, which 20% still a significant amount, is the potential for critical commercial success. We do look at everything, sort of how each sort of category will contribute to like the track record. Can this team make it a commercial success? Project risk and feasibility. What's going to happen here? Like, is this a well-planned project? Will this fall through? Is this going to be a success? So sort of we look at it that way. We really do, again, our mandate, like I mentioned, is economic development for Ontario. But we do also really value diversity as well, specifically underrepresented groups in the IDM industry specifically. So we recently had a diversity bonus. We've actually incorporated that directly into our scoring now. So that's really important to us, especially like IDM Fund does a lot of video games. There's a lot of gender parity issues there. And of course, just diversity on the screen in general needs to be improved. So that's really important to us as well.
Yeah, that's good. That's very important. What are some of the pitfalls? What are some of the things that people should definitely not do that are going to be deal killers? And I'm going to start with you, Charlie. When I went on this journey, I talked to as many filmmakers who had been approved, and I was like, you know, what should I definitely do? What should I definitely not do? Because they're all have different mandates. So Charlie, in your experience with the different funders, are there any kind of things that you've done or other people you've heard have done that are just, you know, don't do this and definitely do this?
That's a really good question, and I'm not sure that I have an immediate answer. Maybe I'll go from when I was on the jury last year for Saskatchewan Creates and for their digital program. So it provided interesting insight because then, you know, I'm not competing in Saskatchewan as a producer, but I got to see the creativity and business plans that other companies were putting together. I would say my biggest caution, because it's so much in the zeitgeist right now, we need to really consider who is telling the story and why. So I think sometimes where I saw pitfalls is when the people in kind of positions of power, be that writer, producer, director, etc., are telling stories that are maybe just like too far out of their own personal experience, where they need to make sure that there are people on that team that can authentically speak from the place that the story needs to be told. And I think we can all think of many examples over the past few years where we're learning, we're doing better, and we need to continue to strive in that direction. So and it can be challenging. I'll use the example of our dating show, Dating Unlocked, right now. So it's a queer dating show. It's very important for us as an LGBTQ owned company that's part of the CGLCC, the Canadian Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, as a certified supplier, to hire as many queer people as we can, because historically they, you know, are marginalized in different ways, have less screen time, sometimes don't have all the same opportunities both in front of and behind the camera. But logistically, that information needs to be offered at the same time. As an employer, it's not a question that I can ask. But I can tell you on this set, it is very exciting. All of our daters who are coming on are coming up and just saying, this is revolutionary. This is so exciting. I've never been on a set where like there are so many just community members where I can feel free to be myself, you know, especially when we're dealing with intimacy, romance, etc. And just coming out of a pandemic where we've all been isolated for so long, we can create this space of safety. So we're doing things like, you know, I have my little pronoun button on today. We do introductions that way to signal safe spaces wherever we can. And we have an intimacy coordinator because we're dealing with you know, romance and dating and stuff. So I think we can, yeah, just continue to look for the opportunities where we're failing, and we do every day. You know, we're far from perfect, and we need to continue to hone and craft and make the whole experience for all departments and all people involved in a production as comfortable and full of joy and all the wonder of creativity and creating that we all got into this business for in the first place. And sometimes it's hard because those of us who've been doing it for a few years, we're really comfortable around the camera and the lights or speaking with funders and all these other things. And we just need to make sure that that doorway is open and we can invite conversations, we can invite mentorship. And I think that's why something like this TO WebFest panel is so important.
Yeah, thank you. That is very important. Monica, any insight on do's and don'ts and any feedback from jury? I always, in my failed applications, I always go after the jury comments and take them to heart, because sometimes they're helpful and surprising, and sometimes they're shocking, and you just go, wow, okay, noted. Any feedback from jury members on what they like and don't like?
Again, that varies by year and the jury that we have on board, because it changes every year. But in terms of you know, how you can prepare like the best application, read the guidelines, and we have a whole coordination team that's available to answer any questions. So if there's something that you don't understand, then certainly reach out to us. We want to help you build the best application possible. We even have like something called a pre-application consultation, where if you're not quite sure whether or not your documentary digital linear series is actually a documentary, then certainly submit a pre-application consultation. We'll have a look at it. We'll let you know whether or not we believe that it's eligible. The other thing that I highly suggest that you do is, if you are planning and you're to apply and it's your first time applying, set up an account with our system. It's called the dialogue system. It's not, I mean, it tries to be as user-friendly as possible, but set up an account now, because it does take a couple of days for all the verifications to go through, just so that you're not scrambling at 11:59 on September the 30th to get your application in. And again, read the guidelines. We also have a list of required documents. Go through that, because if you're missing a document that is kind of a supporting document for your application, and it's not submitted on at that deadline, then we can't look, like, you can't submit after the deadline. So we will look at what we have on hand, October 1st. So yeah, that is, we're all very friendly here. We're all happy to help you. So certainly reach out if you have any questions.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I found that I did that, and it was very helpful. So I would just say, to review, so when there's a deadline, let's say September 30th, creators need to be looking at that, August 1st, sign up, familiarize yourself with the interface, the list of documents, and just start that journey, because you're going to need a lot of things that you can't necessarily turn around in a week. You need letters from people, you need resumes from people. What we did is we found, all the key people gave their resumes, but they're all different formats. They're all kind of, everybody has their own creative resume. So I tried to make things logical, so at least somebody reading resume would understand, there's, name, work experience, education, at least so they can read it. They don't have to, figure out how to read someone's resume. And just, I tried to format everything properly. But then about a month out, or in that first month, that's when you can read everything at your leisure, put your feet down and just read through all the documents, and then get in touch with the funder and say, when is your seminar, so I can actually, hear the whole overview of what the program needs and wants and how you do it. And at that point, you already have your questions because you're kind of familiar. And then after that seminar, you go back and read everything else, and it makes a lot more sense. And then you still have about 4 weeks to actually get your application together. And specifically, here's the funding. How are you funding it? It's this, and this, and does it make sense? And is it logical? And then, you need letters and you need support from all kinds of people. And, people are busy, they're on shows that, they don't necessarily get you their letter or their resume to you, within 24 or 48 hours. Sometimes it takes a week. And in the week leading up, it always seems to be a scramble. As much as I would say, okay, we're applying, 7 days out. You miss that and you end up, I tried to apply at least a day or two out, because on the day of, they're getting all these applicants, and sometimes the website freezes up. But even if that happens, I found the tech support were very helpful, and they're, even the day of, they're like, yeah, try again, it's open now.
Yeah, that's a very good point, though. Sometimes it does crash just because we're getting so many applications in at the same time. The way our system works is about 2 weeks prior to the deadline, that particular fund will, the drop down, it'll appear on the drop down menu. So you'll be able to start, uploading all of the documents, so that you're not kind of cramming on that last day. And yeah, certainly that document checklist is a very important document
Yeah, and that's what I would do. I would just be uploading and uploading and uploading. And so you end up with 30 or 40 documents. And the night before, I would just check them and say, okay, at least I can, I'm later than I want to be, but I can hit submit at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. And then 9 a.m., I look at it, and then, okay, it goes in at 10 for a 5 p.m. deadline. I mean, that's later than I'd like, but in some cases, we ended up there because it's a lot of material. And I format the names. I used to format the names all the same as well. So when they're up there, you can, at a glance, you can see exactly what this is. Danielle, any feedback from jurors on what they like and don't like?
Yeah, again, like Monica said, it really does vary from jury to jury. You're not necessarily going to lose points on this, but if the easier the application is to read, the better. The tidier it is, the better. So like those are just key tips. And like,
no
like
typos.
said, no typos, formatting it nicely. I prefer PDF documents, so most of my colleagues do. Like, we're opening a lot of things. And obviously the jury is very professional, but like, you don't want to taint their experience reviewing your project. And it also speaks to like your ability to deliver a quality project. So, I think, it really does vary jury to jury. We don't like seeing if there's an inflated budget or a crazy expense on the budget or a crazy claim, the jury is going to catch on to that. The jury is very smart. So, if there's anything in your application that is like an obvious exaggeration or just like not a reality, like the jury will catch on to that. You can name drop a ton of people, but unless you have, a letter from them saying, I'm interested in participating in this project, or I want to give financing to this project, the jury's not going to take that as they're going to take it with a pretty big grain of salt. So, and I think I just want to sort of reiterate what Monica was saying, like, read the guidelines, read them so closely, become best friends with them. We have a program policies document that we just created that's sort of across all of our programs, and that's really important as well. And the budget and financing guidelines is something that people often just ignore. And then luckily we're able, unless the budget's a total disaster, we're able to come back and ask for some corrections after the deadline. But there are a lot of mistakes often made with almost every application in the budget. So definitely read through those guidelines as well. And they're conveniently on the template, the budget template. It's the first tab.
Yeah, that's very good advice. I found I got feedback like that. So somebody is going to read every line of your budget. So I got feedback like, you have budgeted for your composer, but you have not budgeted for music rights. So I would say, well, the composer is generously throwing in the music rights with his fees, but still they're like, where are your music rights? Do your actor budget amounts include the fringes? Because I would include the fringes and overtime as an estimate, but there would be nothing in the fringe line. So, little things. Somebody is going to read every line, and they're going to read, who is this person? What is their rate? Is that realistic? Or is it too much? Like, why are you paying the continuity person $700 a day and you're paying your key grip $300 a day? Like, how does that work exactly?
Yeah. A tip I like to give applicants is like anticipate the questions the jury is going to have and just answer them in the application. Yeah. Like, just look at it yourself, have a peer review it, and look at our guidelines and decision criteria, and even our application materials. So that's up like a couple months in advance of the deadline. I like to tell people to use each description for each supporting document as a checklist. So like, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? Have you addressed this? Like, just anticipate the questions, and that really does help make for a really great application.
Yeah, that's good. I also found that what we would do is we would have three sets of eyes on every document. So, one person is me, another person who knows the process, and another person who doesn't know anything. They're just looking for typos or anything that, this doesn't make sense. Why is this paragraph in the wrong place? Just extra sets of eyes because, I'm a writer and there's a typo in your screenplay on page 1. No one's going to read page 2. So you really want people reading and saying, okay, they have their attention to detail down, so they will be able to do cost reporting. You know, that's a good idea. If it's full of typos, you know, it becomes cringeworthy. Charlie, any other insight of things you've heard from people or experienced? You can talk generically about your own experience if you don't want to.
Yeah, I would say take advantage of all the funders when they do their info sessions. Even if you are an you know, experienced producer who may have worked with the fund before, attend those info sessions, because guidelines change, programs, little nuances change. You want to make sure that you're up to speed with the latest guideline or the latest deadline that you are intending to apply to, because you don't want to have a blind spot in that side. And oftentimes they'll provide great slides, like Danielle was saying, questions. They're going to give you all types of hints and insight into what they're looking for, what the jury is looking for, from, because they've likely just finished another funding round. They've probably just heard it from and had all those conversations. So you'll have the latest, greatest information. So make use of that. And also, you know, an unsuccessful application is just one paver in your road, you know, of your career. So like, continue forward. I have many shows that, like, you know, it might not be right now, but it might be right in a year from now or 2 years from now, or a new digital platform emerges that suddenly that's on their wish list. That's exactly it. Or, you know, the funders, as they continue to evolve as well, it becomes the right show right now. And when they offer feedback, like CMF has a great feedback document that you can get within the portal. Read it, think of it critically, you know, reflect on what advice was given. And, you know, it's just like, how can we be better? How can we be the best, you know, creative team? And some of them offer phone calls as well. And so take the opportunity. Don't be shy to get on their calendar, have that 20-minute conversation where you can ask for more insight. If you have a question, you know, if there was a little bit of clarity lacking on what happened here, where, why didn't we land that shot? Because that will be critical in honing a reapplication, or critical in making a better application for the next show.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I would add to that, you know, be kind. Nobody likes rejection. It's very disheartening when you find out, oh my God, they didn't fund us. What are they thinking? But the other side of it is, when you get that letter saying you're funded, you're like, oh my God, they like me. They really like me. Like, it's really amazing to get funding. And when you get rejected, it's really hard to, you know, take it well. But keep in mind that if they have 50 applicants, not everyone's getting their money, and, you know, 15 are, or 15 or 20 are. And there's so many variables. There's timing, there's, you know, things going on day to day in society that are influencing the trends. And, you know, is this project the right project for right now? So, you know, be kind. These are all nice people, you know, Danielle, Monica, they're all nice, normal people. They have a job to do, and they're trying to fund as many projects as they can. So definitely, you know, take the rejection well, because they're also not going away. You know, a year from now, Danielle's still going to be there, and you're going to want to apply again. So don't get upset. It's not personal. Just not every project can get funded, and you know, the rejection is hard, but keep it to yourself, and, you know, scream into the void, but be really kind, because all these people are kind people, and they're all working at the funders. Sometimes they move to the next funder, they move around. We're all in the industry for the long haul. No one's going anywhere. So don't get upset, and don't take it personally if you get rejected. Just take the advice and reboot for the next application. When are your next deadlines, Monica and Danielle?
I can go first, and I also will plug our information sessions. Our next deadline is August 30th, and that's 5 p.m. hard stop on August 30th. We do have 2 information sessions next week. So we have the more interactive stream that's happening on Tuesday, and then Thursday, the one that's probably most of interest to the attendees today, is the video content stream for production and concept definition. I'll be running that. We're also going to be recording a sort of more generic info session that will be available on our website anytime you want to take a look. And then we're going to be doing some fun content programming throughout August, where we'll have some AMA sessions and some interviews with successful clients. So lots of opportunities to learn more ahead of the deadline. And of course, call us anytime. That was more than the question you asked, but.
So our deadline, as I mentioned, is September 30th. In terms of information sessions, I'm not sure, I haven't checked the calendar. However, I do encourage everyone to sign up for the CMF emails, and you'll be kept up to date as to whether or not there are any sessions. And, you know, certainly give us a call, reach out, where we are happy to help as well.
Okay, before we wrap up, Rodney, are there any questions? Now that I've burned through all of our time.
Let's see. Hold on. Oh, I'm sorry. There are no questions.
I'm seeing some questions. I think we've answered
just
most
some nice
of them.
comments from Heidi Lynch.
No, those are from previous.
Okay.
So, okay. No new questions.
Here's one question. If you already have a few episodes of a series, are you willing to acquire that you like? Are you willing to acquire them commission development for further episodes, or does it need to be fully original? We kind of answered that. In the case of CMF, it needs to be second season. In the case of Ontario Creates, it needs to be original.
I guess Heidi did have some questions. Do you want me to answer them, or do you want to?
Sure, go ahead.
Sure. So I think Heidi asked odds of a new company receiving funding. If the producer starting the company has experience as a producer, but the company has no track record. So yeah, we do allow new companies to come in, but the full-time employee or the owner need to have the 3 years experience in the industry, delivering the linear content projects to the market, or at least one producer credit on either like a full web series, a feature film or documentary, or a television property. So there are definitely chances that, like, if you have a great team together, it's okay if the company is new. We'll just look at like the team's experience as opposed to the company's track record. Heidi also asked, if I were not to receive funding, is there a feedback process? Yes. So for Ontario Creates, we do feedback calls. So we don't do written feedback like CMF. We do feedback calls, and those happen a few weeks after we notify people of our decisions. And those are, and like James mentioned, like those are really a great opportunity for like a positive conversation on how you can improve your application. I have had some pretty difficult ones, and I won't say they shine a great light on the company for coming back in, because it does strain a relationship. You're welcome to be upset. I know it's tough, but it is a really great opportunity to have a really constructive call. And we do offer feedback calls for successful applications as well. So no application is perfect. So anytime you are considering coming in again and you want to know maybe how you can improve upon your last application, we're open to doing that as well.
Okay, here's a question. What's the ratio of unscripted to scripted that you're looking for? What works better for the demographic you're trying to reach?
James, I think, I'm just going to, sorry to interject, I think some of these are from the last session with Zach and Melanie from CBC Gem. I think there's a couple spillover questions.
Okay, so are there any, Rodney, are there any others specifically for us? I did see a welcome Melanie. I was like, oh, great.
Nothing specifically for you guys. So
okay, good. Okay, so we can wrap it up. Charlie, anything else you want to plug? Where can we see your last show? Where can we see Avocado Toast?
Avocado Toast is available in Canada on outvgo.com, Amazon Prime, and Apple TV. And internationally, we are on Google and Pluto TV, Vudu, Lesflix, Tello, recently on Canal Plus in France. We're
Oh, good.
just releasing in French on their new Hello
Right.
platform. So yeah, lots of places, but you can.
Did you do that with a distributor or did you do that yourself?
I generally manage distribution for the company
Great.
internally, and then we sometimes work with a digital aggregator as well, another Ontario company called Syndicato, and I would recommend other up and coming producers who are looking for digital distribution to reach out to them. They're great.
Right. Okay, good. Okay. My show's Chateau Laurier, and it's on season 1's on Facebook, and season 2 hopefully is everywhere. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it, and good luck with your applications, everyone.